Good morning once again, and welcome to the Haven Financial Group radio show. I'm Larry Kolvig, founder and CEO of the Haven Financial Group. Nice to have Lance Larson, our CPA and tax preparer at Haven, on with us today to talk about this wonderful discussion on taxes, which right away listeners are going, oh my goodness, I thought we were done talking about taxes. We're never done talking about taxes, and maybe you should be talking about it more to avoid some of the mistakes and pitfalls that you maybe grumbled about come April 15th. We can avoid some of these things you complain about every tax season. So at Haven, we're big into forward-thinking tax planning to minimize some of those tax implications that could have maybe been avoided. And if you're listening and all you do is get your taxes prepared and you're not doing tax planning, you may want to think again, because we find the tax planning throughout the year can avoid a lot of those negative surprises.
Lance can make April 15th a holiday for you folks, as opposed to maybe a day that you dread. Lance, let's talk a little bit more about estate taxes now. I think people are a little more cognizant of this, and recognize this is something they maybe need to plan for. But let's just start from the very beginning. What's the number one thing people need to know or prepare for when it comes to estate planning and estate taxes?
So with estate taxes, what that is that there is going to be an excise tax based upon the value of your estate. So we look at all the value of all the assets that you own when you pass away. Mm-hmm. And when that total comes up, for the federal purpose, as long as we're under 13.99 million this year and someone passes away, then there's not going to be any estate taxes due for that. However, Minnesota is not quite as generous as the feds are. Minnesota, their threshold is $3 million. And so when we look at people and saying, hey, if you're going to be worth more than $3 million, you know what? Your estate is going to be cutting a check to Minnesota before the beneficiaries can get their cut. Mm-hmm. And when people start hearing that, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want my hard work to go to the state of Minnesota. Well, now that's when we need to do some planning, where if you're still alive, then we can do gifting right now. We can get money out of your estate. We can put things into irrevocable trust. There's a lot of different plans out there to help reduce your estate value. Mm-hmm. But once you pass away, that opportunity is now gone, and your executor or trustee, they're the ones that are going to have to figure out what the value of all your assets are. And then they might come up and say, oh, yep, we are worth more than $3 million. Here's the check that we have to cut to Minnesota.
Sure. So let's start with some of these steps that people can consider when doing their estate planning. And let's start with irrevocable trusts. I'm not sure everybody understands what that means.
So typically trusts are going to be defined as either irrevocable or revocable. Mm-hmm. Irrevocable means that it is set in stone. You can no longer change that. Revocable means that you can change it. So if you have children there and all of them are doing great and everything is kosher and you want to split it all between the kids, great. And then one day, little Johnny, who's grown up now, decides to go do some silly things in life that you don't agree with. And now you're going to die and give him money. Maybe you're not so sure about that anymore. And so you want to make changes. Well, if you had an irrevocable trust, that's no longer an opportunity. But with that revocable trust, well, you can still make changes. So when we look at taxes for your estate, the irrevocable is good for us because it's now out of your control. The revocable ones, that is going to still be a part of your estate. So just be careful when you're looking at trusts out there and when you're talking to a lawyer about setting one of these things up, or if you're doing it on your own, what you're really setting up there, because there are different tax implications for each one that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage, as you know, Kim, Carrie, Anna, and Keith are our estate planning attorneys here at Haven. If you're listening and you don't know if you have an estate plan, or maybe it's way outdated, or you've been putting it off like many people for 30, 40 years, give us a call and set up a no-cost consultation with them to go over whatever you have or the questions you have. And 85% of Americans do not have a competent estate plan, and that can pose some big problems if you're no longer here. So we strongly encourage it. And of course, that estate plan also has to do with minimizing and reducing these taxes. So important to get that done. There's always a sense of peace of mind and a smile on people's face when they finally get it done and they say, we finally got something done we've been putting off for all these years. And it's really about peace of mind.
It's a hard thing to have to broach, but in the end, I think you're probably right. You walk out feeling like a weight has been lifted. I want to ask you about gift taxes. So gifting your estate away. How much can you do, and can you actually gift it away tax-free?
So every year there is an exclusion amount that we can give to other individuals without having to report on a gift tax return. Mm-hmm. And so right now the gift tax is at $19,000. So mom and dad can give $19,000 each to each of their children. They can also give $19,000 each to their in-law children as well. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it and you have mom and dad who have 3 kids who are all married, they can turn around and gift out about almost $120,000 out of their estate without having to report a single thing to the IRS. Mm-hmm. Once you go above that $19,000 limit, though, you are required to fill out a gift tax return. People freak out about that one because they're saying, oh, now I have to report something, now I have to pay it. No. As we talked about in the beginning, the feds have a 13.99 million threshold. When you go over that $19,000 of gifting, now we're just going to start using up that 13.99 million of your exclusion. That is a lifetime exclusion there. We just had this year a client come in who was looking at some farmland that she wanted to get out of her estate. It was valued at over $1.5 million, I believe. Yep, we fill out the gift tax return. It says we gave $1.5 million of land out of her estate over to her daughter. And now we have that record on file. Now, if she passes away, her estate does not include that $1.5 million of that farmland right there.
Sure, absolutely. Let's talk before we run out of time here about charitable contributions. You can also give money to charity, and that has tax implications.
So as part of your estate, if your will or trust there has a specific exclusion that part of your money is going to go to a charity, church, a wildlife fund, that one will become a deduction for your estate. So again, to put some numbers out there for our listeners there, if you're at $3.5 million in your estate and we put into our trust or our will that says we want $1 million to go to our church, mm-hmm. What will work is that Minnesota says, here's your gross estate of 3.5. The charitable deduction is going to be 1 million. So now we're left with that $2.5 million taxable estate. Well, that $2.5 million is now below our $3 million threshold. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we're not going to need to cut a check to Minnesota.
Sure. Wow. Again, these are the kinds of things that people probably don't know, because this isn't what you do for a living. And these are the kinds of things that can save your heirs and so much money, and can also keep your hard-earned money going in the directions that you want it to go in. All things that people need to strategize right now, right? Lance, you need to start this process.
So as we talked at the beginning, right now, between April 16th and December 31st, this is the planning season. This is where we can make the changes. We can get everything planned out for 2025 so that when we get to tax prep season starting January 1st, there's not going to be any surprises. And then April 15th is not going to be that much of a burden for you.
Yeah. Big mistake to start that planning on December 1st, correct?
It is, because we've run out of a lot of time.
Yeah.
Big mistake, Kim, but we see it all the time. Try to avoid those. And, If I could just add, at Haven Financial Group, again, our 10-year anniversary, we do everything specific to retirement planning. Numerous times over the years, I've said that, the retirement puzzle pieces. Do you have all the puzzle pieces? The estate plan, the investment plan, the tax plan, Medicare, healthcare, long-term care. Many people completely forget about that. Amongst all the other different things, all the puzzle pieces. Look at all of them, and if you're not getting the attention, if you're not visiting several times a year, again, retirement is more than getting together with your guy or gal once or twice a year for 45 minutes to an hour. That just is not enough attention that you should be getting, especially for what you're paying. And you should know what you're paying, by the way. There's nothing free, and you may be paying a lot more than you should have. And in closing, if I could just point out something that I've really seen way too often this year, and I don't know why, is a lot of individuals coming in. If you're a married couple, this affects both of you. And if you're single, obviously you need to have a plan too. But I just recently had a lady come in, and she goes, Larry, Glenn took care of my Medicare, thank goodness. Lance helped me with the taxes. And she goes, this is our investments. I have no idea what I'm doing. I lost my husband 7 months ago unexpectedly, and I was the wife who didn't want to participate in any of this stuff. And he passed away, and I've spent 7 months trying to figure it out on my own. And she goes, if you can encourage anybody else, please do so. And that's not saying this out of fear or making people fearful. It's real. It affects both of you. Have a backup plan. Maybe you're an investor. Maybe you do all your investing. Your spouse doesn't pay attention. Have a relationship with somebody ahead of time, because if you lose a loved one, that is not the time to start figuring it out. So again, I've just seen too much of it, and I encourage, get the attention you deserve. And at Haven Financial Group, we love that opportunity. There's no cost to visit with us. We'll walk you through our process. And at the end of the day, if we're a good fit, great. At least we helped you out in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. 612-504-8400. That's how you start the process. Give them a call. Tell them you heard us here on the radio and you'd like to set up an appointment. 612-504-8400. Gentlemen, great to be with you. Lance, thanks so much for being a part of the show today.
Thanks for having me again, Kim.
Kim, great to be with you. We'll see you next week.